So I just started going around the galleries. Maybe 50% of the artists showed interest, but maybe 10% of them really come to my shop. Slowly doing this. And those artists who came here and made print, they tell others.
Hello, print friends, and welcome to the 53rd episode of Pine Copper Lime, the internet's #1 printmaking podcast. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. I release weekly podcasts with people in the print world who are doing something a bit beyond the expected. So please subscribe on your podcast listening app of choice. You can also find Pine Copper Lime on Instagram and Facebook, and you can sign up for our monthly newsletter with print news from around the world, all at pinecopperlime.com. We also have a Patreon page where, if you like PCL and you want to give us $1 or $2 every month, it really does help us keep the lights on, keep our spirits up, and keep printmaking chats in your ears. Printmaking forever, shun the non-believers. My guest this week is Satoru Itazu. Satoru has been a collaborative lithographer for over 3 decades, running a compact studio on the outskirts of Tokyo, where he produces incredible high-end editions. Satoru is a generous teacher, and his Instagram is known for in-depth instructional videos and collaborations with artists from around the world. I was fortunate enough to visit him in his studio in 2014, and we got to share our love of printmaking and some delicious soba noodles. I was very happy to reconnect with him for this episode, where we talk about how his study of lithography took him from Japan to Washington State, to Tamarind Institute, to Oregon, and finally back home before starting up his own shop. We dive into the love of lithography, the mystery of buried stones, and contemporary Japanese printmaking. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to romance the stone with Satoru Itazu. Hi Satoru, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy that we were able to connect again. It's been a few years. Yeah, but I had the absolute pleasure of getting to visit you in your studio just outside of Tokyo I think we were saying maybe about 5 years ago, somewhere around there. I came and visited you with my friend Katie, who was living in Tokyo at the time, and we got to see that beautiful neighborhood that you live in and your lithography studio. And then I remember, I think it was when we were leaving, we passed by a beautiful temple, and the temple was having a celebration for people's pets. And so we left your studio and we came into this huge group of dogs wearing kimono. I was like, this is a dream world. This is all I ever want. Yeah.
Pet cemetery near the temple. And we went to the noodle shop, ne?
Of course, yes. I do remember the noodle shop as well. So I'm glad I can be there again with you virtually, although too far from the noodles, unfortunately. But yeah.
I'm really surprised that you started doing this podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't, I knew you were in lots of printmaking stuff before, but I was really surprised to see you doing this.
Yeah. Well, I've loved podcasts most of my life. What I mean by that is, even before there were podcasts, I used to stay home on Saturday nights to listen to the radio and radio stories and radio shows, which of course were before podcasts, things like This American Life and Radio Lab. And so I've always loved this form of storytelling. and loved printmaking. So for me, yeah, it seemed like a really natural combination for the two is sort of how I ended up with it. Yeah.
Enjoying you're doing what you're doing.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, well, before we dive into some other questions for you, could you please introduce yourself a little bit and tell people who you are and where you are and what you do?
My name is Satoru Itazu, and I have a lithography print shop here in Tokyo, just outside of the city. I've been printing for artists for a long time, 30 years, maybe more. I'm working basically myself in this little print shop. Last 5 years, I kind of involved in university. Yeah, that's what basically printing for artists at home. And once in a while, I go to university and print with students.
Yeah, and like we said, it's you live in a really beautiful neighborhood with like it's very green and like you said you've got the pet temple there. And
Yep.
so when artists come to work with you, do
Uh-huh.
they stay like a residency or do they just come for the day? How does that usually work?
I don't really run a residency here. So basically, they come in the day. And when they start drawing, maybe sometimes they work in a living room, processing plates and printing in this shop. So I just, it's not a really big shop. So yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because yeah, as you said, it's the space of the shop isn't that big, but I feel like in Tokyo nothing's that big. So it's so it seems to me just like a Tokyo-sized litho studio, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy, working in a very small spaces.
Why is that?
Maybe that's what the way I had to do. I wish I could move out to the bigger space, but maybe for now it's okay with me,
Yeah.
printing in a small space.
Yeah, yeah, you're used to it. Yeah, and so you do beautiful work there. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So, where did you grow up and what role did art play in that time in your life?
Okay. I I'm not really originally from Tokyo. I'm grew up in it's called Gifu, which is maybe somewhere between here and Kyoto or Osaka. And that's the area. They still make good Mino Japanese paper.
Oh, okay.
So Mino region is very, famous for Japanese paper. But my family had nothing to do with the paper.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I got really nothing, my background as an artist or printing, but back then.
Yeah. So, were you someone who, as a young person, were you drawing a lot? Did your family take you to museums? Did you have anything like that in your life?
Not really.
Yeah.
Probably I never had any memory going to the museum when I was small. So nothing really, I had nothing to do with art when I was growing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you come to art then?
When I was 20, I decided to go to the US just to see something new. That's how it started. I went to Seattle, and that was 1979. Then I went to the English schools and started going to the college and stuff. That's the time I start going to the museum and taking some art classes at the college. Yeah.
And was that the University of Washington? Or
No, no, that was a community college up in Edmonds. Do you
oh,
know?
yeah, North
A
Seattle
little
Community
close.
College.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amanda Knowles teaches there, and she's a printmaker, and they've
Ah,
actually hosted some printmaking exhibitions, and yeah, they still have printmaking in their blood up at North Seattle Community College.
oh,
Yeah,
good. Good.
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
and so it was there. So did you take your first printmaking courses at that
yeah,
college then? Okay.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's how I started doing art classes and also some print printmaking classes. I didn't know that I'm going that direction,
Hmm.
back then. But that's how I started doing it.
When you were doing your printmaking, was it kind of a little bit of everything? Were you doing intaglio and woodcut and lithography as well?
Yeah, maybe I just took a
Mm-hmm.
beginner's course for each of them and did drawings and photography, just in general courses there. Because
Hmm.
that was easier for me to take rather than other, subject.
I could see though, particularly if you're coming to the courses and you're someone who's not necessarily a native English speaker, that
Mm.
sitting through a lecture on Shakespeare might be more challenging and not as interesting as being in a class where you're making and there's such a visual component to it. So I could
Right.
I could definitely see that being a richer experience at that point in your
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So why was it Seattle? Was it just because it's sort of close, like the
Well,
closest
maybe,
city, or?
I was thinking going to the States, maybe West Side is easier,
Mm-hmm.
much a little bit closer than East Coast. And yeah, sounded really nice to me. That's how I picked that city.
Yeah. How long were you there?
Well, I think I was there about 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I moved down to Oregon,
Mm.
using Oregon to finish the university down there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And did you go on to like keep studying printmaking in Eugene?
Yeah, I did printmaking at the University of Oregon there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at that point, did you really sort of realize that lithography was what you wanted to do? Because I know you eventually ended up at Tamarind.
When I was still in Seattle, there's one guy came to the class to teach lithography. His name is Dwight Coburn, and he had a little shop in the city of Seattle called Coburn Press, which is a lithography print shop. And it's a very small shop in the basement of his house. When I was taking his class, he asked me to just come by to his studio and maybe I can do a little help for him. So I went to his studio and sponging for the printing and sometimes graining some stones and things like that. That's how I start doing lithography. That's the guy who kind of taught me to applying to the Tamarind Institute.
And so was Dwight a collaborative printmaker, or were you just helping him with
Yeah,
his own
yeah,
work?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I think he moved to somewhere, and I don't know where he is now, and I don't know if he's still printing.
Hmm.
But that was a very interesting experience for me because I never seen something like this before. Of course, I didn't know anything about what's happening in terms of lithography in Japan. Then I moved down to Oregon for 2 years, and I think I came back to help him again for a while.
And then from there you went to Tamarind, right? How was
Yeah,
that?
I was there 1984. I don't have a much career as like a printing lithography. And so it was really amazing how, you know, printers are printing in the shop at the Tamarind. That was really
Mm,
amazing to me.
yeah,
Interesting stuff.
yeah. And so were you there for 1 year or 2 years?
I think I was there less than a year. I don't know how the system works there, but I went to the second program, and I didn't stay for a master
Mm,
program.
mm-hmm.
So I think it's about 1 year. I'm not sure, somewhere around 1 year there in New Mexico.
Yeah. How did you like New Mexico and Albuquerque?
Oh, so different from Seattle.
Yeah, right?
Very dry down there
Yeah.
and very wet up in Seattle.
Yeah.
So that was very big change in terms of landscapes and stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really enjoyed it. The food is different and people are different. I really enjoy that there.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of climate in the United States, it's hard to get much difference between the Puget Sound and the Southwest.
Yeah,
It's just the 300 days of rain versus, the just that
very dry.
dry desert, but it's
Yeah.
so beautiful there. I did my postgraduate work in Tucson and I
Wow.
still miss the desert. I'll still look at little rundown adobes that are for sale online and think about and make little dreams about like maybe when I come back to the States I can do this. Because it's I feel like that particular Southwest,
Uh-huh.
it's a part of the world where some people it's just in their blood and they just are drawn to it and it completely, they fall in love with it. And I think I was definitely one of those people. Some people, they appreciate it but they can move on, but I definitely have very fond memories of that part of the world. And
Yeah.
I hear it's great for printmaking because it's so dry. Well,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
produces some challenges, but the actual storing of your work, you don't have to worry about foxing, you don't have to worry about
Yeah.
mold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's too dry for printing on a stone or plate, dries very fast.
Right. You need to have a really good sponger
A
to
good
keep up
sponge
with it.
there.
Yeah. So after Tamarind, did you then
Hmm.
just decide to go back to Japan from there?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I didn't know anything about what's going on in Japan. So I wanted to know, if there are some print shop in Tokyo or something. So I moved to Tokyo. I started working for a big print shop in Tokyo. It's very big, maybe 20 people working there.
Oh, wow.
They did lithography, intaglio, and sometimes they did screen printing. But most of the work that they are doing was, you know, um, reproduction work, and which is kind of big in 80s in Japan. They sell in the department stores, but unfortunately, I didn't see much artists coming to the studio.
Yeah.
I wasn't really happy, but that's the first time I moved to Tokyo, and much. I didn't have much choice, so I stayed there working for a couple years,
Hmm.
and then I got money to buy my own small litho press.
Mm.
Then I, decided to maybe just go on my own in a small rooms. I think I started my own 1987 or 8. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Was it difficult to find a litho press in Japan at that time?
Well, there's a good manufacturer here, and yeah. So it's a really nice press. I found out later that there are some shops in Tokyo doing original work too.
Mm.
So, those materials, I didn't have any problem finding it, even including press and inks and plates. So that was lucky that, I can go into my own business without much problem.
Tim and I both have lots of wonderful connections with printmakers in Thailand. And one of
Uh-huh.
the big barriers for them is getting materials.
Right.
And so, you'll have a lot of plate litho there just because
Uh-huh.
there's just not a critical mass of stones in the
Hmm.
country,
Hmm.
to for them to be easy to get. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Basically I'm using a plate. They sometimes they come like 1 meter by 80 centimeters.
Mm.
I think that's the maximum size right now, but it used to be there are bigger plates. So, you can go bigger size. We don't have many stones in Japan.
Mm.
I think we used to have in history, they used a lot of stones for commercial printing,
Hmm.
and but I don't know where they went to. It's disappeared. Maybe somewhere in the ground you can find it later.
I find that one of the most romantic things to me about lithography is the history of the stones, and that
Yeah,
they have a lifetime that can, depending on how much they're used, that can stretch beyond the human lifetime. And
yeah,
they have their own personalities and they have a history to them. Maybe it was Elizabeth Jean Yance when she was on the podcast, and she was talking about how the limestone, it's made of living things,
uh-huh.
so
Yep,
it's
yep,
so this idea that this matrix that we use to create our artwork, from being countless little bits of life to being pulled from the ground to traveling around the world to having all kinds of different artists work on it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's really
yeah,
wonderful, and
uh-huh,
I hope that we continue to get new ones.
uh-huh,
I'm still trying to get an interview with the Bavarian litho quarry that's
uh-huh.
producing them. That's definitely on my list. I've been putting some feelers out to see if I can get someone to connect me, but I
Yeah.
might just have to go there. That once
I
all the
was there
restrictions.
2 years ago. Yeah, there was a kind of event in Munich.
Uh huh.
It's called Lithography Days,
Really?
and I went to that event, and there was a tour to Zollernhofen,
Oh,
and we
amazing.
went to the factory, and we went to the quarry, and they still producing really nice stones there.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see still they make really nice stones there. It's really far from Tokyo. Transport is more than it costs for the
I
stones, I
know.
guess.
Yeah, that's the other thing about them is that, they're definitely little pockets around the world where they've been sent throughout the decades, or
Yeah.
yeah, at least in Thailand, and it sounds like in Japan as well. There just never has been like such a huge number of them that it's easy for artists to get them. And
Uh-huh.
it's funny when you said that they were underground, because I think
Uh-huh.
recently in the States someone were doing some construction or something on
Yeah,
their
they
land,
dug up
and
stones, no?
and they found stones that people had just used to fill in like a swimming pool that they didn't want anymore. And that absolute epitome of that, one man's trash is another man's treasure thing. Because their lithography stones are something that, if they're a part of your life, they're
Yeah,
incredibly
yeah,
meaningful to you. But if they're not, it's just, It's just a hunk of rock.
Yeah. Those commercial printing company, they just dump those stones into the, rivers or
Mm.
wherever they, to find.
Particularly because they're natural. Like if you dump them into the river, okay, it's a bit, it's a bit of littering, but it's not like dumping chemicals or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they felt just giving it back to the earth. You could lose sleep thinking about all the beautiful stones in the world that somebody just tossed to the bottom of a lake, I think.
Yeah. So I'm hoping somebody find those stones from the underground
Yeah.
in Tokyo. I hope.
I hope so too. Maybe you could like train a dog to smell limestone, you know?
Yeah.
You could send him out. He's like,
Yeah.
like a bomb sniffing dog, but for limestone, we could train them up and get them to find all the
Yeah.
hidden litho stones.
Sounds good.
Well, yeah, so you decided to start your own
Yeah.
collaboration studio. So you'd
Right.
saved up and you
Right.
got your press and
hmm
everything. And
hmm
then how did you start from there? Like, how did you start to build what you were doing? Did you know artists that you could invite? Did you take out
Yeah.
advertisements in
Yeah.
trade magazines? How did that work for you?
Right. Those technical part to setting up the shop lithography studio is not that difficult, but starting as a printing studio as a business it took me a long time to do it. And so I just started because I didn't know any artists here, and I didn't meet any artists at the shop that I was working before. So I just started going around the galleries, and I just talked to younger. Younger means that somebody close to my age, because I
Mm-hmm.
started my own printing when I was late 20s. So I start going around galleries to meet those artists around my age, and because those artists, young artists, still not belong to galleries, so
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for them to come, freely
Right.
to make prints. So I start talking to artists like this, and maybe 50% of the artists I talk to them showed interest, but maybe 10% of them really come to my shop.
Yeah.
So, I slowly doing this. And those artists who came here and made print, they, tell others about what I'm doing. So gradually, many artists start showing some interest making prints. Yeah, that's how.
And so you said that there were other studios in Tokyo that were doing the fine art, like the not
Right,
the reproduction. Were
right,
they
right.
working in lithography as well?
There are some.
Uh-huh.
When I came back, I moved to Tokyo. There are two printers from, Tamarind.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they are already working with artists. So, that was really surprising and
Mm-hmm.
good sign. Yeah, and other shops that are doing interiors and screen printing for artists. And yeah, that was the 80s. So still, there are many galleries and print shop doing really active until, the bubble has, been busted.
I was going to ask what that sort of contemporary printmaking scene in Japan is like now,
Uh-huh.
and particularly with workshops like what you do, because it seems like my experience with contemporary printmakers and contemporary Japanese prints
hmm
is that it tends to be really really, really beautiful work.
Ah,
But there doesn't seem to be as deep a culture of self-promotion
mhm,
that you find in Europe or America or Canada.
uh-huh.
And so when you stumble upon them, it's almost by accident. You know, they're not necessarily out there, you know, using all the right hashtags on Instagram or making their perfect website. There seems to be incredible work, but it's harder to connect with
Uh-huh.
than maybe other places. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Japan, we have a big history of ukiyo-e, woodblock, and that was still, many collectors are still buying those old Edo period prints.
Mm-hmm.
And I think contemporary prints market is not that big compared
Mm-hmm.
to those ukiyo-e market. So it's still, 80s was different because I think I remember Ken Tyler had a big show in Yokohama,
Oh, yeah.
really big show, and one of the printing company bought those collections and still have them in somewhere outside of Tokyo.
Hmm.
So that was kind of symbolic. Those big prints by Tyler Graphics
Mm-hmm.
in New York. That was really shocking, to see the size and those famous artists,
Yeah.
got together and they did a really big show. That was successful show, I guess, but that was just about the time the economy starting change. And since then, I think the number of print shop here in Tokyo is getting less and less. There are maybe not many shops that I know in Tokyo. So it's hard to say.
It's interesting because if you said the ukiyo-e prints have such a huge presence
Right.
in the timeline of printmaking, and I think, you know, when I was working at Davidson and I talked to a lot of people who come into the gallery and they didn't know what this was. You know, they're like, what is this? Like what is it, what does this mean etching? What does this mean aquatint? What does this mean
Mm-hmm.
lithography?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kind of trying to suss out what base level of understanding they have when they come in, because you don't ever want to, you know, over explain or talk down to anyone. One of the things that they did know was Japanese woodblock. And so if you're looking, it'd be like, oh, this is a woodblock print. And you'd say, they'd be like, what's a woodblock print? And I was like, well, you've heard of Japanese woodblock prints. And they'd be like, yeah, of course. So it has this huge place even outside of the art world, even outside of the sort of uninitiated. And it's interesting because it almost sounds like it casts a little bit of a shadow over contemporary printmaking because that presence of those Edo period masters is still so strong. And so when people come to Japan to collect prints, they're maybe not thinking contemporary printmakers, which is really unfortunate because there's such beautiful work that comes out of Japan. Yeah.
So, the print shop and at the same time, the galleries which sells prints are getting less too.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's how it is now.
But I feel like, you know, that you still seem to be really active in your studio, and you've got an amazing and informative Instagram that everyone should be following. You post really incredible videos of process and the artists you have working. And it seems like you've got a pretty steady stream of artists who are interested in coming and producing work. And I know some of those as well you're doing at the university. So you've got the art students there. The kind of young generation of Japanese artists, are they interested in it? It seems like it from what I see.
Yeah, I think some are interested in because contemporary art is big, especially in university. They really go into the contemporary conceptual thing. And the university that I was teaching, they had very good studio. They had a huge room for lithography, intaglio, and wood blocks and screen prints. And they are very open. So any student who are interested in just they can come in and they can talk to the those who are in charge of doing each shop, and they can just start making their own work. Then they go back into the painting room. It's Gedai. It's called I call it Gedai, which is University of Tokyo Fine Arts. And it's a big university in the middle of Tokyo. Good student, and there are many artists coming out from the university too. So that was an interesting place to hang out with students.
Yeah.
And I take those videos with my phone, and I just put 1 minute clip on the Instagram. Because when I started doing my printing, even when I was at the Tamarind, there are not many movies or videos that for the printing lithography. And I found, just watching somebody else printing, it really helps a lot. And at the same time, you will see how different other people are doing just for printing lithography. I see lots of movies or videos from Europe or sometimes South America. And interestingly, they do different, slightly or sometimes very different way of printing. And I really enjoy those, difference that the people are doing.
I think that's something that's so interesting and nice about printmaking is that it's such a process-oriented art. And so you get kind of, I don't know, two art for the price of one, in the sense that you get the finished product, right? You get this beautiful lithograph, but the whole process of how you got there is an art in and of itself. You have to get the timing right. It's like a dance, it's collaborative, all of these different things. And knowing that kind of openness that printmakers share is really great. I think you probably know, but in one of the early episodes of Pine Copper Lime, when I talked to Patrick Wagner, you came up as one of his first sort of early international correspondences about lithography, and as about someone who you could, he could come see and learn different things from you. And it's amazing how, different stones, different climates, different paper, different days, they all affect how lithography reacts to things. And really, I feel like if you have a personality in which you like an ever-moving target, lithography is perfect for you, because it will never be just something you can go on just total autopilot to develop the stone or whatever it is. You constantly have to be thinking about it.
Yeah. So that's why I started, putting lots of short videos, and and that was a perfect place in university, because each student sometimes do very interesting stuff. So I just took videos and see how different they are each time.
Well, as you know, you're a collaborative artist, which of course involves getting people together in one space for extended periods of time. How has coronavirus affected what you've been doing? How has the lockdown been? Talk to me a little bit about what the recent months have been like.
Okay. I finished teaching at this Tokyo Geirai last February, and then I was supposed to be start teaching at Musashino Art University, different university, but this coronavirus things happens, and I was supposed to be there in April, but I haven't been to the university at all. And it's not this only this university, but every university here. Of course, in Japan, the new class starts April, so they cannot start classes, and they kind of every university keep postpone those dates, and I was just waiting, when it starts.
Mm-hmm.
But finally, I got a message that they will start shop in July. So I had to just wait and wait. I couldn't invite any artists around this time because we are supposed to stay home.
Yeah.
I cannot do anything right now. So
Yeah.
I could send some plates to artists. I did some, but I haven't really. We haven't really started proofing or anything yet. It's not really still too early, I guess, because
Yeah.
still even just in Tokyo, maybe 20 or 30 new infections reported every day.
Yeah.
So it's still too early to start, working with artists.
Yeah. So what have you been doing with your time? I saw on your Instagram that you've been hanging out with
Yeah,
badgers,
well,
right?
I got run out of those videos. So I start, picking up some of the works that I printed with artists a long time ago.
Yeah.
Starting putting, each prints on Instagram. That's what I've been
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Well, and I did see that a Japanese badger came to visit you too recently. So you've
Yeah,
got
yeah,
some visitors in your life right
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They should stay home, but they come out.
Yeah. Well, I think, aside from getting back in the studio and starting with the new university,
Uh-huh.
is there anything else on the future that you're particularly looking forward to that you'd like people to know about?
Well, I'm kind of have a one idea. I right now I'm 62.
Mm-hmm.
So I start thinking maybe I should, do something about it. I mean, you know, I like to maybe move out this small space
Mm-hmm.
and maybe, some shop that, many people can have access to.
Oh, yeah.
Something like you can go, maybe you can print for in a long time. It's not really a commercial printing shop,
Mm-hmm.
but more like a communal shop.
Yeah.
Then I don't have to print myself.
Well, yeah, and I think, yeah, and having a shop that more people have access to,
Uh-huh.
I feel like it would be really great as well in, keeping this flame of contemporary Japanese printmaking going.
Hmm.
Because it's just, the more people come, the more people know about it, the more people have access to these really specific set of equipment and chemicals and tools, just
Yeah.
the more life there'll be in that. And
Hmm.
I just think that, like I said, Japanese print is so incredible that everyone should know about it and more people should be doing it. And it's just, that would
Yeah,
sounds really
yeah,
great.
right. Those students who finished university, you know, they have no place to print
Yeah.
in Tokyo. There are some museum has its own studio. Yokohama Museum and Machida Graphic Art Museum had their own studio. Then you can go and print with press. But it's very limited. So maybe, in the future, I can have bigger space with, couple presses for
Mm-hmm.
those in print artists.
Well, definitely let me know if I can help in any way. I'm always
Yeah,
keen.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to get involved
Thanks.
in projects and promote
Uh-huh.
things. And I'm sure that my husband, an editor who loves lithography, would always be
Uh-huh.
keen to come out for an extended period of time and help out and learn and just be part of the print community. So maybe we'll get a chance to do that sometime in the future.
Good.
That would be
Sounds good.
great. That would be great. Well, before we totally sign off and say
Uh-huh.
goodbye, would you please
Uh-huh.
tell people where they can find you and see your videos and see badgers every once in a while and your archive, and just when you get back in the studio and you start making the great documentation, where can they find that?
Yeah, probably the best way to look at those video is on my Instagram. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Itazu, Itazu, and I think I have a underbar and litho. Yeah, it's called Itazu underbar litho,
Beautiful.
and yeah, you can find it. So I have YouTube, but probably you can find it easily. And around this time, because I have lots of time, I started putting new YouTube videos there too.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I feel like the way it works is that Instagram is so much more convenient and you open
Uh-huh.
it and it just kind of lets you know, but you really are limited by the length of the
Right,
video
right,
in terms of how
right,
in depth you can get. So
right.
what I'll do is I'll put a link to your Instagram in the show notes and to your YouTube so people can see
Yeah, thank you so much.
that kind of like quick fun reveal, and then for people who really want to dive in and take advantage of some of your knowledge and your sharing and your documentation for the longer litho process, I'll do the
Okay.
YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Domo arigato gozaimasu for your time.
Uh-huh.
And I really hope that we can work together more in the future, and that we'll see you in person sometime in the post-COVID world.
It'd be great to see you again.
Yeah, that
Some.
would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.
Well, that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Newton Paul. Newton is an independent researcher and archivist who has been piecing together the history of Cuban printmaking in the 20th century. And he'll introduce you to some incredible artists you never even heard of. Trust me when I say, you won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing help from Timothy Pauschak and music from Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.